Hey guys, back with another breakdown. Yeah, just a little update. This is my second time actually recording this, because the first time I don't know what happened. Something that stopped recording halfway through. There was some sort of error, but yeah, that one turned out to be like an hour and a half, so I think I'm going to try to make sure it's like an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes for this one, just to make sure there's no errors. But I'm going to try my best to do that. But anyways, yeah, we're drawing Sasuke. This is the Sasuke I used in the full page Sasuke video for YouTube, and I wanted to, I let it sit for a while, and I inked it, and I colored some of it, and then I let it sit for a while, and then I came back to it, and I finished it for this one. I am going to have the Naruto one up, but okay, let's get to the illustration. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just inking with a pencil tool. This specific pencil tool, this is all in Procreate. This specific pencil tool I've actually created on Procreate, and sometimes I use it to ink just because it's a little bit more soft. But I mean, you can use many things. I just used it because I felt like trying to use it for this one. One of the things I wished I did was gone a little softer on the line width, but one of these days I want to try to do kind of like a more so traditional-esque feel drawing, like actually try to make it feel like traditional coloring, something like that, that would be really fun, because Procreate does a really good job if you have the right tool. It does a really good job making things look traditional, But yeah, all in all, I mean, there's not much to say during this inking part. It's just me inking, trying to make things wrap and do trying to make things feel three-dimensional, make things pop. Just really quick here, let's bring it to this guy really quick. Oh no, where's my pen? Oh, found you. Okay, so really quick here, I just want to kind of go over what is going on here. So this is one of the things I like about this, is I like doing this thing. It has good weight to it. The head is going this way, the body is going this way, and it feels like the body is going this way. And it has this nice weight to it. And it's all like, if we had a middle here, a middle line here, this is part of the focal point, the hand. And then we have the arm protruding with its, foreshortening, it's got this. And then we got this whole thing here clashing, and then these flying through, hitting this. So, for example, if you came in, you look straight at the hand, you're going to be looking up this way maybe, or down this way. In any case, you're eventually going to lead around. There's just so much going on, and having a good focal point, which the hand is leading to this and that, or if these lead to this, then it'll lead to the hand, because the hand has its own brightness to it. And of course the electricity is going all over the place. And funny story about the electricity, I'll tell you here in a second. But yeah, so I've mentioned this before with drawing people, but I like it when it goes like this for the head, this for the body, this for the legs. It has a good weight to it, because that's kind of how we are when we stand. But yeah, it has a good weight to it. And then we also have this nice dark part here. So, and then light things in the middle that help emphasize on that. Like everything just kind of comes together. But yeah, let's get back to the illustration so that way this doesn't get too heavy. This video, because I do not know what happened last time. That was crazy. So while I'm inking, I'll talk about the last video. So the last video, halfway through it, I realized I had not drawn the electricity. I was here with you guys, and actually not halfway through, I was looking at this and it zoomed up on the electricity. I was like, oh my gosh, guys. I was like, I didn't do the electricity. And I was like, oh my gosh. So at the end of the video, I actually did the electricity real time, and then, you know, I'll let you guys watch it real time, me making the electricity and stuff, and then afterwards I exported it or went to export it twice, and it wouldn't do it, so I tried to export it a different way from my screen record thing. It exported, but it only had half an hour's worth of the recording, and I was like, oh goodness gracious. I was like, you know, I could just crop that half an hour part and then do the rest, but I was like, I'm just gonna start it over. It didn't even, you know, save the part with anything past the half an hour was somehow just corrupt, and I don't know what happened with it. But if I had to guess, I think my computer was out of storage or something. That's the only thing I can think of. Because my computer only had 32 gigs left, apparently, which means there's a big chance that this video file, what it basically does is it saves in a specific way. Where this is about art, not about how the video saves, guys. You guys are like, Chris, what are you doing? Anyways, yeah, hopefully all this inking stuff, you know, inking the eyes and stuff help with, you know, like with the tutorials that I've had out. You can kind of see the wrapping, how I'm trying to wrap the wrinkles around the arm, you know, trying to make these eyes feel more 3D, you know, that sort of stuff. Trying to make sure when I'm inking, my lines aren't too stiff. I should definitely do an inking tutorial, and I think that might be one of the manga tutorials, because that's probably the better way to do the inking tutorial, because, you know, manga is more about inking, and illustrations aren't quite as much about inking. I mean, there is obviously inking and illustrations, but I mean, if you know how to ink a manga, you'll know how to ink an illustration. So I think I might make that one of my manga tutorials. Let me know if that's really if you guys really want that or not. I'm probably going to do some like polls. Okay, we're getting into some coloring here. So I've shown how I do this before with the gradient background. I pretty much just choose, you know, one color on one side. I choose a whole base color, and then I choose other colors to put in with it. And I just use the airbrush to kind of make the whole gradation. And I typically use, you know, the warm light as the front light. I like using, you know, like deep saturated colors. I like starting off with not very saturated background and working my way up from that, because it's good to have nice saturated portions, but then less saturated portions of the background, and I don't know, it works better for me when I use a little bit less saturated stuff. Here I wasn't able to do like color dropper or anything, so I actually have to like color in everything. And I don't know if I will, maybe I'll skip through this part. I don't know. I mean, they're all flats. This is just me putting in flats. There's one thing to note during the flats is you'll notice how purple this is right here. And that's because the contrast of the white and this purple look really weird on each other. But the truth is, once I throw on that background, that purple all of a sudden is it's lighter than the background. It's actually not lighter than the background, but the background's so dark that it actually made that feel really light. Yet, look at how it looked on that white. The contrast is just way different. So when you're working on a dark background, all your colors are going to have heavier value range. And remember, when you go heavier in value, you typically want to go heavier in saturation too. It's all done in Procreate. But yeah, just getting these bases in. Then skip forward from some of these boring parts. I'm using the skin. I used more of a purplish color than I normally would. I think I actually changed it to even more purple than what it is. Now, this gold isn't even that gold. It's in a weird brownish area, but it looks gold because of the background and how deep and dark the background is compared to it. Like this gray is actually in a purple. Yep, see, it's in a purple. And then I decided to go more blue with it. And that is a straight up blue. Like, it's low saturation, but it's a straight up blue. So just remember, I don't know how much, I say this stuff in a lot of my other tutorials, so I don't know how much I have to repeat it, but, you never want to go with grays. You never want to go full gray. You always want to have some saturation to it. Like when you're in the blues, you want to make sure, like for metal, you want to make sure they're in the blues somewhere, that sort of thing. Like that jacket thing, that doesn't look blue. It looks gray, but it is definitely a blue. It's just closer to gray. So once again, just doing the stair-stepping thing, where if we had a sorry, a bug fell on my tablet. Sorry. Oh goodness. Okay, so if we had a color here, let's go here, and we wanted to make so I'm going to select this and we want to make shade. We move down, stair step a little bit, and I'm going to move it towards purple, the hue towards purple. And you want to make sure you really know what hue is and saturation is and value is, because I'm going to be saying those a lot. But yeah, bam. Got a good shade right there. Nice little shade. Then if I wanted to make it brighter, like shine marks, give a little bit of light to it. I want to go a little bit darker in some parts. That sort of thing going on there. But yeah, just stair stepping like this. Never go straight down because that's going to make your drawing feel flat. And now we're going in some lighter blues. Obviously they're not light, but like that's a purple I'm putting on those pants colors, those are definitely purple. Let me see if I can pull over the flats here real quick. I'm just going to try to find a while it's going here. I actually don't have the flats available right now. Alright, I'm going to shoot some flats over to my computer. Alright, and now we'll open with here. Now, so all these flats, see this is, let me bring this up here. Make it nice and big for us. Alright, so that's the flat. See, super low on the scale, but this is also one of the darker parts of his design. Still almost in the same area. Almost in the same hue. This one just shifts a little closer to this pink area, excuse me. Now look what color his skin is at, all the way down here, and it's not even in. This still looks like a skin color. It's all the way down the purples, but this is such a dark illustration. I lighten up his skin a little bit as I go. You'll see that. And then we have this. It does look gray. It looks gray, but it is definitely a purple. That's how much backgrounds affect the color of your character's design. Now this looks gray as a mofo, especially against these two colors. Not even close. Look at that. It's purple. It's purple. So that's how it is. And this hair looks black, but it's not black. Don't ever use solid black. If you have to go close to black, that's fine, but just don't ever use solid black. It's a little weird unless it's a specific stylistic choice, but just doesn't work very well because you typically don't see solid blacks in anything, that's colored, unless it, like I said, it's a very specific choice that you need to make. But yeah, that's how those affect, the background affects the color so much. It really does. So you wouldn't be able to do something with these exact color picks with a white background. You would have to higher the saturation of everything. Oh, sorry, not the saturation, the value. You probably have to lower the saturation slightly and then higher the value. Make it lighter, because everything's just so dark. we could do, I'm wondering now, this is also going to change this background area. Let me do this real quick. Let me just grab this. Do this. Make it the size of the whole canvas. Cover everything up. Yeah, it's good. That's fine. And it's going to change the brightness of the background too, but let's do this. Let's actually let's change it. Brighten everything up. If we brighten everything up, also we have to brighten up the turn up the saturation just a little bit, and it's also hidden the line art too, and you'll see that his hair is starting to look more like this. See, the line art shouldn't be doing that. It would look better if it wasn't hitting the line art too, but that's starting to look more like what it would look like if he wasn't in that's interesting. But yeah, that's essentially what it would look like. Oh, let's go back here. Alright, now let's let it keep playing here. Don't want to lose the video. Wow. So I'm putting in some extra, I'm putting in some deeper shadows, because I put in my first layer of shadows here. See, I'm also putting in some really deep, heavy shadows because of the light source is strong. And I do this a lot. I do dark backgrounds with heavy light sources. And these are some of the harder illustrations to do if you don't know the shape of your object very well, because you have to know how to shade the object properly. And it gets really difficult. Oh, sorry if you guys can hear that fan, but yeah, the fan's really going. But yeah, if you're using a lighter image with a light source that pretty much a lot of those lighter images have very I think it's called like ambient light, maybe it's called, where it's kind of just coming from everywhere and it only creates shadows in a very small portion of the illustration, which is what happens a lot with anime, in anime, like animations, because it's easiest to do ambient light with animations because you can use mostly just flats. With very little cell shading. Oh, here it is. I'm actually trying to, oh, no. I had already put in the purple for the skin, never mind. Yeah, I'm just putting in the eye colors here. Put in a little bit of an eye shade on the top of that eye there. I didn't do it on the other one yet, I don't think. Oh, now I'm moving back down to this part. There's a part where I didn't like how this was turning out, because I just didn't know how to implement the light onto these dark colors, because when there's dark colors, it absorbs the light in a different way than a lighter color. Like a white or, a gray. Even a gray may go close to what these darker colors would do, but basically the way these pants would absorb this orange, I wasn't sure how to actually do. But in any case, what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of softening out. So I did my cell shading, and I started softening out some of the edges that I knew needed to be gradiated for more of a painterly look. And this is something that I actually want to do, is show how to do a really good looking cell shaded drawing and then taking that to the next level that will make it look more painted. But yeah, I'm adding in more level of color to the shaded areas in this portion. I'm adding purples to those blues, purplish reddish feel, because purples and blues are very close to each other. So if I were to move the hue over with the saturation almost the same, maybe a little bit lower, I'm able to bring a little bit more life into those shadows. And same with lighter areas, but lighter areas typically it only happens based on the light that you're using. But you can really bring in different colors into the shadow areas, so that way it brings out more life into that specific part of the color. Because there's a lot of color changes that we don't pick up on in everyday life, but it happens. And also it's just an artistic choice. Here I am trying to put in a purple, and this was the point where I was just like, what the heck am I doing? I just didn't know what I was doing. Like, I just didn't know how I wanted to try to implement this orange light on that. And you see, I just got rid of it completely. I was just like, nope, I'm going to go straight orange. Give it a try. And it looked all right. I ended up doing some hard light oranges that I end up softening up later. And it's just, the problem is that orange just doesn't show up like that in this type of colored pants. It just doesn't show up that hard in these kind of pants, and it just wasn't turning out right. Like I said, I end up softening it up later, and to give it a good gradient, what I do is in some of the bigger parts, like that left leg there, a little bit later, I lightly go over it with a really saturated, really high and bright blue. And I go over it with an airbrush just ever so slightly, and it really helps the gradient between the orange and that dark. It helps fill it in. And what it did was it made the bluish purple dark part feel a little better, and then it also made the part that was trying to blend into that area a little bit more purple, so it kind of filled in an in-between, because between orange and blue, purple is a good middle ground. Because if I put red in, that would have been a little strange. So you can already see there's a purple there a little bit. Believe it or not, 11:52. Believe it or not, the other video did the same thing, and it only recorded about 25 minutes of it. So I literally have to come back to this and do this again. So this is my third time recording some of it. I'm starting at this point, and we're just gonna go from here, and yeah, I have to do it in 25 increments and then put them all together, essentially. Sorry about the delay, guys, but anyways, let me talk about this a little bit. So I didn't know how I'm pretty sure I might have said this already in the other one, but I'm getting mixed up on what I've said and what I haven't said. But I don't know how the orange reacts to these pants too much. And I end up lightening up some of these oranges a little bit later on. Man, let me tell you, I understand this process of this way too much now. Because since this is my third time watching this and explaining it, maybe this is the way to learn. if you want to learn something, explain it to someone 3 times. Boy, oh boy. But yeah, so far, yeah, it's crazy. So I'm trying to add in some darker shadows within these shadows. I'm trying to give it a little bit more life. Trying to leave some lighter spots, and then I'm trying to blend in that hard edge. Didn't need to be a hard edge there, so I wanted to blend it in to make it a little bit softer, because there was no shadow there to make it a hard edge shadow, so I just did a blend in, trying to put in some orange light to hit those spots, some harder oranges, but they're not that hard. And here I'm painting straight into the shirt. There's a part of the design I forgot to do, and I'm just using a more bluish, low value, low saturation to make it look like there's a shadow there from it overlapping, being an overlapping part of the shirt, and then I put a darker line to make it seem like it's a piece of line art. And I go up and I fix the line art so that way it fits in nice and perfectly. I didn't fix the line art off to this left-hand side to make it wrap around, because I thought it fit just good enough. But put in some darker shadows on the other side to kind of sell that new addition to his clothing there. Putting in some harder shadows, blend it in a little bit. And I got rid of the line art here, and I was trying to make this pant leg seem a little bit more painterly. But I pretty much was getting rid of any of the line art that was on the pants and trying to do all the folds and wrinkles on the front part of the pants with just color. And here I go in, I was softening some of that orange light on one of the sides. Felt like it was a little bit too hard. I think I mentioned this, I eventually softened out some of those blues that are there. I felt like those blues were a little bit too harsh, because the light's hitting it so much that that's such a wide area that I lightened out some of the blues, and I also lightened out some of the light that was there on the oranges, so it wasn't so harsh. I didn't think it needed to be as harsh as it was. It was already an orange on this bluish surface, and honestly, I probably could have done this a little bit better, the demonstration of light on this pants, but I don't know, I just didn't know how to go about it. And it's something I really need to look more into. But I mean, you could see me trying to work it out here, because light just reacts differently on darker surfaces, and I don't think the light would absorb, that dark surface would absorb that light the same way I did it here. But I ended up making it work in a way that it looks pretty good in the end, and looks satisfying in the end. Alright, trying to put in some harder shadows here in some spots that I was like, this could use a harder shadow. Put in a little bit more wrinkle to this part of the pants. Oh, and there's that spot that I was talking about where I kind of blended in with a brush, blended in the shadow to give a bit of a gradient, trying to sell that right hand orange light on the hand, and now I'm doing it on the face. Boy, that face. This is my 3rd time talking about it. And it's actually painful looking at it, because that face, I had a really hard time with the face. I edited it a few times, and I changed the color of it. I changed the color of the I ended up doing the shading in a specific way that I realized it just didn't work very well, because the shading on the face, for anime faces, it's very, very subtle, because anime faces are very, very rounded. There's not as much indents in the features. They're very smoothed. and so it's not going to show the your frown wrinkles that go from your your nose area down to kind of like the sides of your cheeks. It's not going to show those shades as much, and I kind of emphasized it too much in this, and I eventually smooth it out. There's a point where okay, now this here with the knuckles, what I'm doing here is I'm lightening up the knuckles on the right hand side to show some light that's catching it. It is turned away from the light, but that's why I'm only doing it on the very edge of it, because I wanted to sell some light really catching up onto those knuckles because they're so bony. I wanted to make sure, even if it's a slight amount of light, it's catching those middle knuckles. But, and with that face there, I just try to add in some lip shading. Yeah, anime characters don't have that. Some of them do if it's a painting norm sometimes, but yeah, it just did not fit on Sasuke in this drawing. So I realized that the nose was off, so I started trying to fix the nose. And I try to go with a little bit smoother of an anime face in the end, you'll see. The shades are just really sloppy here. I just didn't really see what I was doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I knew what I wanted to do, but it just wasn't working right until I realized, I think I'm putting these shadows too harshly in these spots. There needs to be a little bit more light in some of these spots. It needs to be much more subtle. And there's a point where you see me start making a little bit more subtle, and I'm only really doing a shade on the left hand side of that nose. I get rid of that deep shade that was like going from the nose down to the side of the mouth. I soften that out, and things start looking a little bit better as I go. There's also a point where I start making the skin a little bit more orangish, and I'm trying to really get that. I need to get that bottom shadow for that underlip, but the thing is I end up changing the mouth when I come back to this. Sometimes when I'm working on one spot a little too long, I might move on to another spot eventually, so that way I give my eyes a break from that one spot if I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I was like, the mouth looked a little weird. Maybe I should put in the teeth marks. Maybe that'll help. Turns out the mouth was just weird. It kind of looks like he's like Popeye going like. But yeah, it was kind of tricky playing with the oranges and the purples here. I ended up finding a mid-ground on how to make it work, and it was pretty much using these skin tone oranges. And then the skin tone color, and then I learned to use a more saturated orange to kind of bring the life into the skin. You'll see it gradually change as I go on. I don't do it all at once because I was having a hard time with it. But this is the point where I end up changing the mouth for the better. Or at least for the better to me, so it doesn't look like Popeye. I need to make sure I know what time it is right now, so that way I know what time to stop this. So 52. Sorry, I was trying to think about what time I need to stop this so that way it doesn't go over. So I need to stop this at about 12:15. But yeah, let's try 12:17. Knock out 2 more minutes. 17. But all right, then now let me see where we are. So right now I'm pretty much just adding in some harder shadows in certain places, like these, adding in some colorful purples in there. Trying not to keep it too dull into the grays, so I put a little bit of purple to give it a little bit more life up in there, up in that shiz. But yeah, it looks like I still haven't changed the mouth yet. It will happen. Don't worry. He'll stop looking like Popeye. So I try to put some darker shades into those wrinkles there. And I felt like it needed to have a little bit of a gradient on that side part of the sword. I also needed to change the sword because it was a little wonky. Let's just be serious here. Let's be real with each other. It was the top of it was sagging. It looks a lot more straight now. Here I go. I'm changing the mouth a little bit. He won't look like Popeye anymore. Oh yeah, and I also changed the nose a little bit more because I felt like it was still a little bit too flat. Fixed the coloring for the teeth. And it's okay. You can change things halfway through. May not, maybe something wrong. So notice I put a little bit of a shadow down there, which is felt like ended up being the right decision. Instead of putting a slight shadow this way, put a slight shadow that way. And it did help it feel blocked in that face of his a little bit. That does work. That is how the face works. I could have put a little bit of a shine right above the lip there, though. So pretty much here I'm just cleaning up these facial features through these shadows and stuff. Trying to clean these up, getting the shadows in right. I eventually erase some of these lines on the face, but now I'm trying to clean up some of the shadows, and I try to put in some darker spots in between the fingers to show a deeper shadow, since they're connecting. I think they're called contours, when things connect or collide and create a deeper shadow. And even though that's technically what the line art is, but I ended up putting a little bit more anyways. So I'm pretty much just trying to darken up the insides of these eyes right here, because technically the little crevice right there between the nose and the eye typically gets pretty dark. It's one of the main shadow areas. So I'm trying to sell the shadow coming from the right hand side by putting some harder shadows on the left hand side of these fingers. And I added a nice little purple up here on these fingers. That's what time it is. Yeah, putting a nice little purple on these fingers. It was like a bluish, to kind of break up that color. And you'll see I eventually go in and add a brighter orange on it and give it a little bit more life to the hands, a little bit more skin color to the hands. And it really has a nice clash between that bluish purple and the orangish color I put in later on. And here I'm just kind of putting in the shines on the sword to kind of like, make it feel more like a sword. Ka-ching! Stuff clashing with each other there. I'm trying to clean up these lines here because I was like, yeah, this looks a little messy, but I started also trying to make the parts that are closest to us more bright, because the parts that are closest to us are also on the background that it's on is also lighter than the stuff that's over hitting the sword, which is going to be more orange. Now, a quick thing here. What I did here was the hair was all this color. Now what I did was I took a blue and I essentially just I took a really high value, high saturation blue and just went with an airbrush, and it created this gradient. And I did it ever so slightly so it wasn't too harsh. I selected the color from this right hand side and started coloring inward to this lighter part to make these shadows. And I do the opposite as well. I select the color from the left hand side to make a couple light strokes on the darker side. And that's a really nice and easy way to really create shadows and lights on dark hair, and on any hair for that matter, but it's a pretty good way to do it with dark hair. And I started trying to break up, oh, there you go, you saw right there, I just brightened it up with some orange. I brightened up that hand with some like orangish red, very bright color, but with the airbrush that's low density, so it doesn't hit it with that full brightness and just gives this nice overlay. Now I'm putting in some really nice colors to break up these shadows to make it feel like it's still more alive, but it's still purple. Trying to sell that purple background. Or sorry, blue background. I was trying to add in a little bit more layer, a little bit more color layer to the shadows to give a little bit more life. And there you can see right there, I just did a little bit of I pretty much you can also see it right there. So like I told you about the smudge tool, I take the smudge tool and I smudge on the edge of this stuff with a brush, with a dry brush. And I'm not sure if I had already told you guys the brush, but it's old brush. I can't remember if I did that in the part that I already recorded in my last video. But now I'm starting to put in some of the hard lights. But yeah, so basically just to touch up on that again, I go to the blend tool and I selected the old brush. It's called old brush. And I blended the shadow and the lighter part into each other, so it makes it have this painterly effect without you actually having to paint it. And it's a really cool thing. And I just did it to the fingers as well. And you'll think I painted it. Someone who may just look at it, especially someone who's not, well versed in coloring or art in general, they may think you painted this. A lot of the coloring in here. So here I'm really just trying to hit those hard yellows. Not too many, but just enough. And I try to soften up this side of the cheek with a nice little orange there. Kind of just some decisions I was trying to make. I didn't have to do it, but I wanted to see if it would work. And it worked enough. I liked how it turned out. Here I am trying to do that same technique I was just talking about with the blending of colors to make it look like it's painted. And I just did it there again. And I did it there again. And now I'm kind of just trying to play around with the facial features, see what I can do with it, see what I can refine, and zooming out, see what it looks like from afar. Getting some more of those hard yellows on that hand there. Now I'm trying to put a little bit of touches of yellow in these other areas to sell this light source on other parts of the clothing now. Just little hints of it here and there. Even though that's all the way on the other side, I wanted to show a little bit of the yellow wrapping around. Not too much. If you do it too much, it's going to look off. Definitely off. But I wanted it to wrap just a little bit. Here I am trying to clean up that side of the pants that I don't know, there's just something there. You eventually see me hit it with the blue. But so here are the cracks that we're doing. I am going to probably end this here in a second. What time is it? Okay, I'm gonna let go a little bit further. So I'm pretty much just using a darker purple here to create these cracks. And just like that gradient on the hair I talked about, I use the same technique here where I draw these lines and then I select the color over here and then I color it right here because this part's lighter than that part in the gradient. And so when I start drawing on it right here, it creates a depth effect as if the light is catching that part of the crack. And that's what's cool about, you see me start doing it here. And it starts making a lighting effect where it looks like it's really, these are really popping up off the ground. And that's one easy way to do that kind of stuff with gradients. I want to try to find a way to actually create a whole drawing with gradients in that sort of fashion, where you gradiate part of the clothing from dark to light, and then you color from the light into the dark for the light parts, and you color from the dark into the light parts for the shadows of things. And it might be a good way to actually quickly do a drawing, and if I can successfully do it, I'll show you guys how to do it. Now I'm trying to fix these guys up. So I am going to stop this real quick. To you guys, it will be like nothing, but I will stop this. Ready? Back. Must have been like nothing for you guys. 1 second. But yeah, I had to, export the other video, and now I'm back. But in any case, yeah, so and here I am, I fixed up some of the splashes of that, of those little parts where the shurikens were hitting. Here I am putting in some hard lights. I'm trying to get some more of the hard shines of the oranges, but not putting too much, or else it would make it feel weird. And I don't even know if Sasuke actually has that, has like a little zipper area, but I put it there. Anyways. Alright, and I was trying to find that layer. So here I'm just cleaning up some things that need to be shaded real quick, because that's such a small area. It didn't have to be like really deeply, shaded or anything. I just did a little simple shading, simple lighting on it, put a little bit of orange to sell that orange light. Now I'm putting in some soft oranges on that midsection of his shirt. If I put too many oranges, I felt like it would have taken away attention and put too much attention on that middle section. So I try not to put too much orange on that midsection, and it would have made the shirt feel a little weird if I put too much. So I didn't put too much. Now here I am doing my blue thing where I'm like, I like to put blue as the backlight. So I started putting that blue on the pants, and here I am going into the gold here. And here I do a really cool effect that I like doing. It's very so everything here looks kind of bland, and what I do is, because that's all very not very saturated, and so what I do is I take a saturated reddish orange, very saturated. You can see, let's go back to it here before I hit it up. Let's see what color I choose. I go back to it. Oh, there it is. See, that is far over in the spectrum. I normally don't go over here all that often. I do with some very dark parts like over here, but so I go all the way over here, much different color than any of these. And what happens is, since these are so bland, you can see the color difference, and it makes it have this vibrant look to it. So you're like, oh, okay, it's starting to have a deeper look to it. Put a little bit of blue in there because I'm crazy. Me and my blues. And so I go back and do that again. And now what I am doing is I'm grabbing a really bright orange, but it's not completely bright. Like, let's go see what orange I actually grabbed. So I grabbed that orange. It's not all the way up, but it's very saturated. And I'm using an airbrush that its density is going to be a little low, or the pressure sensitivity will allow me to make the density low when I hit it. And when I hit it, you'll see it gives this kind of little luminosity effect. It gives a little bit of luminosity. And I end up changing it to more of an orange than it was a red. And I kind of hit it, and then down here it already had that a lot, so I hit it with the yellow. And it kind of gives this nice little glowy effect. And I end up going into it later and putting some harder yellows on it to give it a shine. And you'll see that a little bit later on. But here I am trying to fix up this like little drape, whatever you want to call it, cloak that he's wearing, trying to fix up some shadows on it and shades, trying to touch all that stuff up to make it look a little better. I feel like it looks a little weird right now when I look at it now, but you know, like when you're in the midst of drawing something, you know, I tried putting in some oranges and I was just like, nah, it doesn't really fit. I could have made it work, but I just decided not to. Just decided not to do it. I didn't want any attention to be on that cloak. I just wanted it to be doing its thing, you know what I'm saying, as the dark area of the drawing. Here I am trying to fix up these little sparks because I felt like they were too weird. I wanted to make them more sparky than they were. Like, they looked painterly before. And I'm going to use that glow effect that I normally always do, where I duplicate the layer, and then I pretty much just Gaussian blur the layer that's below it, and then I slightly Gaussian blur the layer that's above it, and then it gives this dull blur effect. But I'm also going to be going into this drawing, or going into this and adding in a second spark coming up here soon. And here it comes. And later on you'll see me change the direction of this. I felt like this felt a little bit too, they're all coming from like this one little direction that felt really strange. And I ended up deciding to swoosh it over so this one's actually crossing over those ones, and it kind of made it feel cool, or I at least liked the way it felt in the very end. And so I'm going to come in here and I turn it to a purplish, and I put in a little shade on his eye. I know the Shrine Gun doesn't typically have a shade, but I wanted to put it in. I changed the color of the line art for his eye too. I changed it to a really deep red, very low value, high saturation, to give kind of a luminosity effect to it. Helps the overall color of it, you know. Makes it really feel red. Put in a little bit of highlights on that top part of the cloak. I did not make him orange. I could have, but I didn't. I decided to just leave it the way it was because even though the lighting is orange, I put the orange in the spots that will lead you up to where you want to look, and that's how it is. That's how painting is. You can decide where you want to put things. Okay, so now I'm just cleaning up these spots that were left over from when I cleaned up those sparks. Now I'm trying to add in a little bit of blur effect here for like motion of these things moving. I pretty much just use that, you know, smudge tool, the blending tool, to smudge it to make it look like it's moving in small areas. And you'll see me use a lighter color, bluish purple, and I create little speed lines with the skin color that's kind of a lighter skin color, and I just kind of put it through it to make it really look like the hands moving. Kind of just put those in there. Kind of give a speed effect. And here I go with the shoe, putting in some of those highlights, but I'm not putting in orange highlights, notice. What I wanted to try to do was do the airbrush effect where it's orange, and I swipe over it to give an overall orange shine. I ended up not liking the way that looked, so I end up taking it back, you'll see in a second, and I end up manually inserting the orange highlights, and I like the way it looked better like that. Didn't look as strong, so I'm just kind of fixing up the toes here. Don't want to forget them toes, having them all pale down there, you know what I'm saying? And now I'm trying to give more life to those fingers by adding in some little orange highlights. Some definitely a lot more saturated orange highlights, but I just wanted to plop them in there to make it feel a little bit more alive, putting a little bit more, hue variation within those colors. And then I also put a little blue highlight under his hair, if you see here. And here, like in the beginning, actually I don't know if I mentioned this in the this is the third recording. But yeah, if you do that technique where I say you make a gradient, you take the darker color and put it in the lighter part of the gradient to make the shades, and then you use the shades to make, or the lighter part of the gradient to make highlights on this side. And then you can add in highlights of the color of the light that is shining on them on the hair. And I didn't like how vibrant that looked. I felt like I went a little bit overboard, so you'll actually see me try to change the color of it, because I thought maybe changing the color would help. It didn't as much as I would have wanted. So what I do is I take the eraser and I erase out the back parts a little bit to soften those highlights, and it looks a lot better like that. And here I am just putting in a little bit harder spots on tiny little parts of the handle, trying to sell that light source by putting a shadow on the left side of this hand, so it looks like the lighting down there is really hitting that hand and shining onto the sword. And then sword handle, and now I'm putting in those highlights I was talking about to make it really look like those golds are shining. And here is when I decided I need to change the direction of this. It felt like it looked weird, and the moment I crossed it over and I got the right cross, I felt like this looked a lot better. I didn't need 3, but I decided to do 3, and I liked the other line, so I ended up making it 4. But the 4th one is very light. You don't really see it shooting over as much, but it is there. And I kind of liked the effect at the end, these shurikens kind of crossing each other, But it might be a little bit too much, but whatever. So I'm doing exactly what I was telling you guys about, where I duplicate these layers, and then I Gaussian blur them. I Gaussian blur the bottom ones a lot more, and then I'll duplicate the Gaussian blurred one sometimes to make it even heavier. But this one I didn't do that with, because I wanted to leave it as kind of a blurish effect, as if they're moving really fast. Now, what I decided to do here is I decided to merge all his layers, copy that layer, so basically all of him was one layer. And so I merged them all together, copied that layer, unmerged them, and then pasted that layer so I had a full version of him on top of all of these. And what I do is I change it to lighten, L-I. I change it to a blending mode of lighten, and I Gaussian blur that to give a somewhat luminosity effect all over him, but it's not too much. It's just enough that it changes the look of the image ever so slightly. And here I'm on an effect layer. It's the add layer. That's the blending mode. And it's just adding in extra shines. So basically I want to make sure the drawing looks good to me before I even use this layer. As if I did not use this layer, I still would have been satisfied with the drawing, and I was. So I moved on to the effect layer to give those digital shines. You can kind of see it happening here. I did some on the sword there. Right now I have him locked, that layer locked, of all of just him. So that way I could adjust, I didn't touch the background, but then I took that off so that way I could hit up these shurikens to give them those real big glow effects. And yeah, you kind of just see me doing it here with the oranges all over, and now I'm getting into the blues that I like, hitting up these left hand sides with those blues, making sure to lock the layer so it doesn't touch the background. I want it only to be hitting him. I do hit up some of the background with these blues, but I like hitting up the inside of his cloak to kind of break up that shadow a bit. I hit up the background a tiny bit to give more of a blue effect back there to really sell that left blue glow. Hitting up some glows on his eyes with that. I used more of a white on that effect layer for that, and that's what it does. It really makes a white glow. And now what I'm doing on that effect layer, I went to some of these parts here. As you can see, there's a slight texture. I went to these parts here, and I took the blend brush and I blended in some of these effects that I had going on, and I made it have more of a painterly texture over everything. Not over all of it, only over certain parts, mostly just the background. Here I'm trying to find the mouth, that mouth color, because I want to put in teeth. But yeah, I'm going to put in teeth. Because I was like, you know what? I think he's missing some teeth. But yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, because I don't know if I mentioned it in the previous recording or not. I'm losing track of everything. But yeah, in the very first recording, I ended up... No, I did mention it. I think in the third recording, I think I did mention it. Here I am putting in the shadow effect on him. I'm using a multiply layer, and I used like a blue, and then what I did was I went ahead and it was too dark, which I already knew it was going to be. I just did the full brightness of it on a multiply layer, and then I went in with the erase and erased the back part to kind of soften up that back part. Then I went to change the color to something I thought felt a little bit more natural, and then I went in with this blending brush with those dry brushes that I've been talking about with that blending, and I hit up the sides of it a little bit to make it look a lot more painterly. Kind of gave it a nice little texture to it. And now I'm coming in with some speed lines, put it all the way up to the left hand side to give a full swoop over the image of some speed lines. I didn't know where I wanted to put it at first, but I put it all the way to the upper left. And I did it with orange at first on an effect layer. And I had it above him, and then I was like, you know what, I don't want it to touch him. So I took the layer and put it all the way below him, right there. So it didn't touch him at all, and it just felt like a background effect. And I felt like the orange was kind of clashing with him, clashing with those shuriken lines. So I turned it blue, and then I duplicated it, and then Gaussian blurred it to make it glow. And glow, la. And that finishes that. And I'm pretty close to being done. I put in some effects in the background here, and then I put in some colors and mash them around, and then I take the blur tool again, the blending tool, and I blend that in with a textured brush to give the background more texture, and I put in some glow shines, like to give a little bit more effect to it. And yeah, I wish I could show you guys the glow part of the electricity, but yeah, that's on the very first one and that's not there. So I end up finding the line art layer and I end up softening up some of the lines really quick, and that pretty much ends the video right there. I soften up some of those lines and that is the end of that video. Now let's actually go to this real quick, and this is the finished image. It doesn't show these happening, but before this video ends up cutting out and I have to record it again, yeah, I'll explain this in the layer breakdown. But yeah, I'm probably gonna fix up some edges here on these, but other than that, this is pretty much the finished image. You guys will get the full finished image when it's all done. But yeah, hope you guys like this. Hope you guys learned something. If you guys want to know a little bit more about something in here, definitely let me know. Hit me up in the community section on my Patreon. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them there or in a DM. I'll definitely like to know what you guys want to learn. And I'll try to do even better with my next illustration. And I hope you guys are having a great day. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.